Well, it's time for us to begin. There's some people doing stuff back there, and our first song will be number 8. We've had a good day.
Some good sauerkraut.
Oh, it's up there. I didn't think it would be.
Did you hear me, Tim? Some real good sauerkraut.
Did you? That's an oxymoron. Good sauerkraut don't go together. Those are two conflicting
Because I talked to
terms.
the department before the beds out. Oh, but you got to pick one. These shoes. And you watch me get rid of that. Oh,
We had our,
okay.
and y'all know, because y'all done it yourselves, we had all but 3 of our grandkids with us last week.
Yeah.
They came and they worked. They worked really hard. But they also worked me really hard to try to keep them busy. And I'm just worn out. I was so tired Friday. I was kind of sick at my stomach, and I guess I'm getting too old. But I sure enjoyed having them. And they sure worked hard. Y'all would have been proud of them. And we got an awful lot done. We'll begin our service, and we'll start with number 8. Tommy, would you say the first prayer? And Eddie, would you say the closing prayer? Let every heart rejoice and sing. Let choral anthems rise. Ye aged men and children bring to God your sacrifice. For he is good, the Lord is good, and kind are all his ways. Honor sounding loud, the Lord Jehovah praise. While the rocks and the rills, while the vales and the hills are glorious anthem raise. Let each prolong the grateful song and the God of our fathers praise. And the God of our fathers praise. He bids the sun to rise and set. In heaven his power is known, and earth subdued to him shall yet bow low before his throne. For he is good, the Lord is good, and kind are all his ways. With songs and honors sounding loud, the Lord Come thou almighty King, help us thy name to sing, help us to praise, Father all glorious, o'er all victorious, come and reign over us, Ancient of days. Come thou incarnate Word, gird on thy mighty sword, our prayer attend. Come and thy people bless, and give thy word success. Spirit of holiness, on us descend. To thee, great one in three, eternal praises be. Hence evermore, thy sovereign majesty, may we in glory see, and to eternity love and adore. This time we'll be led in our opening prayer.
Dear Heavenly Father, we humbly come before you today. We thank you for this beautiful day you blessed us with. We thank you for the fellowship that we had here today. And thank you for the opportunity to come here today and to worship you, Lord. We ask you please forgive us of any sins that we might have in our lives, Lord. And most importantly, we want to thank you for sending your Son to die on the cross so that we can have forgiveness for our sins. Please be with all the ones that were mentioned here, Lord. Please watch over them and bring them back to their health, Lord. Lord, please be with us through the rest of this service and out through coming life. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Our next song will be number 51. 51. We'll sing verses 1 and 3. Father of mercy, stay by day, my love to thee grows more and more. Thy gifts are strewn upon my way, like sands upon the great seashore, like sands upon the great seashore. Father of mercies, may our hearts ne'er overlook thy boundless care, but what our Father's hand imparts, still in grateful praise and prayer, still in grateful praise and prayer. Our song before our lesson this afternoon will be number 66. Praise God from the moon, all blessings flow. Praise Him, all creatures here below. Praise Him above. We don't have a PowerPoint this afternoon. I'm sure you've noticed this just from your reading, that at the end of Proverbs, Solomon talks 3 times about 4 things that amaze him. In Proverbs chapter 30, verses 18 and 19, Proverbs chapter 30, verses 24 through 28, and then Proverbs chapter 30, verses 29 through 31. In the first group, he talks about things that amaze him. And one of them is an eagle. And he is amazed by how the eagle, and we are too. If you've seen an eagle fly, he's just amazed at how high they can go and how they can stay up in the air for so long. And then he's amazed by a snake. And I suppose what he did was he left his palace and he went out and he saw a snake, and being the intellect that he was, he probably just observed and just sat there for hour upon hour observing the nature of a snake, and it just amazed him. He saw ships. And I don't know if you've ever felt this way, but there's been times I've looked at ships and I've said to myself, how does something that big float? Something that heavy float? And some of those ships I've seen that went through the Panama Canal when I was in Panama one time, it's unbelievable how big those ships were, and yet they floated right through there. And then he says he's amazed at how young men act around young women and how they carry themselves trying to win the attention of a young lady. And that he looks at it and he's just amazed. The second time he says he's amazed is that he looks at God's animal kingdom and he sees ants, and ants amaze him. When I was growing up in West Texas, we used to have those big red fire ants, and then we had the big black ants. And evidently, the red ants don't like the black ants. And so we'd take a trash can lid and we'd put dirt in it, and then we'd go out. Somebody'd go out and gather red ants, and somebody else would gather the black ants, and we'd put them in the trash can lid, and we'd watch them do their gladiator battle. And usually, I don't remember who won, but usually it was one group that won over the others. He looks at a badger, and he's amazed at something that's that small and yet is so fierce that it hides itself and people leave it alone. He looks at locusts, and he's amazed that they can be so united, and they can be, because they're so united, they can be so very destructive to nature. He looks at a lizard, and he's amazed that a lizard has access. And we've all seen that, haven't we? We've seen, a lizard in your garage, or a lizard can get in your house. And Solomon says they can also have access to the throne of a king. And he's just amazed by that. He looks at a lion, he looks at a peacock, he looks at a goat, and then he looks at a king in this third group that amazes him. And he is amazed by these 4 different groups because of the way they strut. And he gives us this particular indication of a king. He says kings strut very proudly when they are marching with their army. And so Solomon says, here's some things that amaze me. Solomon never lived in our day, in our time. But what he's trying to do is make us aware of the fact that God's creation is amazing. But one of the things that God does that is so amazing is the cross. It is amazing that God in his mind came up with the notion of a cross. And here's what's so amazing. It is amazing that the cross paid the price of justice. See, God is a just God. And God is always going to do what's right. And so here's what God had to figure out. How can the price of sin be paid without Tim suffering, without Eddie suffering? How can I work this thing out so that although Eddie sins, he won't be held accountable, and that he will have a righteousness that he didn't deserve and he didn't earn, but nonetheless he attains the righteousness of God. And that righteousness of God is sinless perfection. So how in the world can my justice be satisfied? And how in the world can I achieve the righteousness of God in the life of people that sin? And God said, I know. I can let my son pay the price of the sins that are committed. And so God said, one day, my son will come to this world. He will live. He will die on the cross. And when he dies and sheds his blood, then I will look at that sacrifice that he makes, and I will finally be completely satisfied. If people will believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God, then God says the cross of Christ will achieve justice. And the reason God had to have that is not for us. The reason he had to achieve this sinless perfection was so that Satan couldn't say anything to God. So that Satan couldn't say, well, that's not fair. That's not right. And so now, because of the cross, Satan can no longer accuse. And so God, in his amazing wisdom, came up with the notion and the idea of a cross on which he would put his own son, that his son would die, and he would pay the price of sin. And you know what? Satan thought he was really doing something. But the truth is, he was destroying himself when he crucified the Son of God. He destroyed himself. How amazing is that? What about God is so amazing? It is amazing that he loves sinners. It is amazing that somewhere along the line, God didn't just get tired. And God didn't say, I've had it. You know, sometimes we do that with people, don't we? They just keep on and on and on. And finally we say, I'm done with you. Aren't we glad God didn't do that with us? That he continues to love sinners. No matter that we're broken, no matter that we're flawed, no matter that sometimes we are rebellious and sometimes we are weak, God continues to love us, and God continues to strive with us and seek us and try to wake us up and open our eyes so that we will see who he is, and we will come to him, and we will respond to his love, that we will be drawn to him. That's one of the amazing things about God, is that he loves us so very much. And he will, and even after we leave this world, he will have loved us every day of our life. And if we just open up our eyes, then we'd see that. What's so amazing about God? Well, is that God hears us when we cry out to him. No matter where you are, no matter what country you live in. You may live in the middle of India. And I had a friend that went to India, and he stayed there for some time. And he said one of the things you notice about India is all of the the things that you're familiar with, crosses. And he said, you don't notice this sometimes in America, but even on the doors that are made in America, if you look, you'll see a pattern of a cross. But he said in India, you don't see crosses and you don't see anything that has to do with God. He said it's all about foreign gods and multiple gods, polytheistic culture. And yet if there's somebody in the middle of India, way out in the country, and they cry out to God and they seek God, you know what God will do? He'll hear them. And so what's amazing about God is that he hears our cry. He heard the cry of the children of Israel in Egypt. He heard the cry of the children in the wilderness. He heard their cry in the land of Canaan. He heard their cry, even though they were rebellious. When things got so desperate, he heard their cry in the book of Judges. And when they were oppressed because of their sin, and because, like Samson, because sometimes of their own stupidity, and Samson cried out to God and said to God just this one more time, please hear me. God listened. That is something that is amazing. David said, I was crying to the Lord with my voice, and he answered me from his holy mountain. I lay down and I slept. I awoke, for the Lord sustains me, and I will not be afraid of 10,000s of people who have set themselves against me. You see, God hears. That's one of the amazing things about God. Here's one of the amazing things about God, is that he preserves us against all odds. What are the odds of us making it to heaven? I suppose by ourselves, not so good. But you know what? We have God on our side. And God says, if he's on our side, he makes a majority, no matter what everybody else does. That's amazing. I try to keep in mind, when I think about making it to heaven, I try to remind myself, it's never been about me. It's never been about my ability. It's never been about my capability. But heaven is about the promises of God. It's about what God has done. It's about what God continues to do in our lives to rescue us and to keep us from the evil one. And the promises that he makes, that through the millennia, he has always kept those promises. What an amazing, wonderful God we serve. And may we serve him until the day we die. We serve a God that can part the... We serve a God that though he may not deliver you from the lion's den, he'll close the mouths of the lions. He may not keep you out of the fiery furnace, but he will protect you from the fires that are in that furnace. And here's what he will do. In the end, he will crush Satan. What an amazing God we serve. This afternoon we're going to offer an invitation. And if you are not a child of that amazing God and you want to be, you have that opportunity. And what an honor and what an opportunity it is to be a child of God. This afternoon, if you need to come to God as his child and to cry out and ask God to help me and strengthen me, then you have that opportunity. Afternoon, if you need to respond, we pray that you'll come. while we stand and sing. Hark the gentle voice of Jesus fall tenderly upon your ear. Sweet is cry of love and pity calleth. Turn and listen, stay and hear. Ye that labor and are heavy laden, lean upon your dear Lord's breast. Ye that labor and are heavy laden, come and I will give you rest. Then his loving tender voice obeying, bear his yoke, his burden take. Find the yoke his hand is on you laying, light and easy for his sake. Ye that labor and are heavy laden, lean upon your dear Lord's breast. Ye that labor and are heavy laden, come and I will give you rest. Our closing song will be number 75. We'll sing verse 1. Hope everybody has a good week. Everybody be safe. Doris got a new car, so it's the little red one out here. So when you're out driving, if you see it, you want to keep an eye on it, some help, or that sort of thing, then you can stop and help her if she has a flat tire or something like that. We want to make sure she's protected and taken care of. So, and one of the ways we can do this is ask God to watch over and keep her safe as she travels and as she drives her new little car. And if you need somebody to pick you up and take you somewhere, call Doris. More than happy to do that for you. And there'll only be a slight charge. I'm going to be her Uber agent, so you'll call me and I'll call her, and I will work out your pay and all of that stuff. Number 75. I sing the mighty power